Helle Nielsen was born on July 4, 1947 in Denmark. While training to be a flight attendant in Florida, she met Richard Crafts, who was a pilot and part-time police officer. The couple got married in the mid-1970s and settled in Newtown, Connecticut, where they would have 3 children, Andrew, Thomas, and Christina. Friends knew that it was a rocky marriage. Helle had admitted that her husband would sometimes be violent towards her. In 1986, Helle noticed an unknown long-distance phone number on the couple's phone records. She hired a private investigator named Keith Mayo, who provided Helle with photographic evidence that Richard was indeed having an affair. In October 1986, Helle officially filed for divorce and alarmingly told her lawyer that if anything ever happens to me, don't think it was an accident. On November 18, 1986, friends dropped Helle off at the couple's residence after she had worked a long flight from Frankfurt, West Germany. A few days later, Helle missed her next flight assignment and hadn't called to let her employer know. Pan American contacted Richard, who claimed that his wife was in Denmark to look after her mother. He would soon change his story, this time stating that Helle was with a friend in the Canary Islands. 12 days after she was last seen, Helle Crafts was finally reported missing, but local police weren't so eager to investigate, so Keith Mayo stepped up and launched his own investigation. Mayo interviewed the family's nanny, Dawn Thomas, who claimed that she'd noticed a dark stain on the bedroom carpet shortly after Helle went missing. The carpet was later ripped up without explanation. Thomas also noticed that a large freezer had gone missing from the garage. Police became involved and looked into Richard's credit card history, where they discovered that he had rented a wood chipper and U-Haul truck shortly before his wife's disappearance. Perhaps the biggest break in the case came after a snowplow driver reported seeing a wood chipper on the bridge that ran over the Housatonic River at around 3:30 a.m. on the night after Helle was last seen. Police began searching the riverbank and discovered an envelope with Helle's name on it, wood chips, small bone fragments, blue fibers, 2,660 bleached blonde human hairs matching those found on Helle's hairbrush, and O-type blood, the same type as Helle Crafts. A fingernail covered in red nail polish was also found, and police later matched it with the same red nail polish found in the Crafts' home. What was thought to be a piece of metal turned out to be a crown from one of Helle's teeth, was also found. Divers searched the river and discovered pieces of a chainsaw. It had hairs and fibers in the teeth, which would match those found on the riverbank. Even though the serial number was scratched off the chainsaw, investigators were able to recover the outline of the code after applying a type of forensic acid. It matched a receipt previously discovered, confirming that Richard Crafts was the owner of the chainsaw. The Connecticut State Police became involved in the case and brought in forensic investigator Dr. Henry Lee to analyze the evidence that had been collected. He located 5 tiny bloodstains on the Crafts mattress and more blood on bathroom towels, both matching Helle's blood type. Dr. Lee came to the conclusion that Helle Crafts had been struck by a blunt force object based on the trajectory of the bloodstains. On January 5, 1987, Richard Crafts was brought in for questioning, and whilst he passed a polygraph test, he was arrested on the 13th of January, the same day his wife was declared legally dead. Prosecutors argued that Richard had killed his wife because he didn't want a divorce. They laid out the chain of events in graphic detail. At around 8 p.m, Helle put her children to bed before changing into a nightshirt that matched the blue fibers found on the riverbank. Once in her room, her husband struck her twice with his police flashlight before wrapping her body in bed sheets and stuffing it into the freezer in the garage. He then tried to clean up the bloodstain on the carpet using bathroom towels. After dropping off Dawn Thomas and his children to his sister's home, Richard returned home and took Helle's body out of the freezer and transported it into the U-Haul truck to the river, where he dismembered it with the chainsaw and ran it through the wood chipper. Afterwards, he took apart the chainsaw and dumped it into the river. The trial was deemed a mistrial after one of the jurors felt unable to convict Richard of the murder, but a second trial was set for November 1989, and Richard Crafts was found guilty of murdering his wife and sentenced to 50 years in prison. The trial was the first to allow cameras in the courtroom, as well as the first murder conviction in Connecticut without a body.